Welcome everyone here today to the third webinar of our four-part series titled Exploring Global Online Marketplaces. Today we're going to be focused in on the European region. So in previous webinars, we had an introduction to marketplaces where we introduced the concept of marketplaces. We discussed the key global trends, the key global players. The second webinar we had was a UK regional focused one where we discussed local UK trends, opportunities and players. And today we will be doing the same, but for Europe. We are very happy today to be rejoined by Frank Vandenberg, Marketplace Specialist. Viewers of previous webinars are well acquainted with Frank, and he will be discussing the opportunities, the trends, the key players, and give an overview of the European marketplace landscape. Our second speaker today joins us from DHL. Lyons has been working for DHL for 18 years and has spent the last 16 of those helping SMEs grow their business internationally. And our third speaker today is Alan Rhode. Alan is a co-founder of Taxmen, a London-based company specializing in tax and legal compliance for e-commerce stores. Taxmen helps businesses to register and report VAT in all jurisdictions. So just to go over some house rules before we go over the agenda, we will be having a dedicated Q&A session at the end, as you can see. I would encourage all participants, if you have any questions, to type them into the box throughout the webinar so we can address them. And now just to cover the agenda so slightly, Frank will be the first person speaking. As I mentioned, he will be covering the opportunity and the seller's journey. Lisa will then be speaking about logistics. And then finally, Alan will be speaking about VAT and taxes. And then we will have a panel discussion. So now, without further ado, I will give the microphone over to Frank.
Thank you, Alan, and good morning to everybody. When we talk about the opportunity for marketplaces in Europe, it's really a question that is split with two answers. First of all, why Europe? To answer this question, it is most relevant if we are looking at B2C e-commerce in total, or e-retail, if you like, of which marketplaces are a part. And as you can see on this slide, Europe is really the third largest e-commerce area in the world after China and the United States. The European market provides a single market in terms of legislation, product approval, etc. And although that doesn't cover everything in Europe, it is really, really helpful. And also because it is an advanced area and it is a sophisticated market, there are a lot of channels and solutions available. The next part of the question then is why marketplaces? And can you see, what slide are you seeing currently? Sorry, can help me, somebody me out? Why marketplaces, right?
Why Europe?
Okay, then I do apologize. This is the next slide for you. I do apologize. Why marketplaces? Okay, so marketplaces have grown very quickly and already taken 40% of all B2C commerce. So the size is substantial, but the growth is even more interesting here. The marketplaces are by far the fastest growing channel in global retail, off and online. It is forecasted that marketplaces will deliver 35% of all retail growth over the next 3 years. So marketplaces are not just eating e-commerce, they're eating the whole of retailing. Now, one of the reasons that it is the case is that the customer experience on marketplace have grown so quickly that is a benchmark now of almost of e-commerce in total. Not just in the search phase, but also in the purchase and the orientation phase. The customer experience is rated higher on marketplaces than it is on on any other retail experience. And finally, marketplaces are great for expansion into Europe because for sellers it offers a ready-made ecosystem and immediate credibility. However, while Europe is one of the lower-hanging fruits to consider for expansion, you need to be aware that in many cases the continental market is diverse and that the offer of marketplaces is very fragmented. Not all countries are part of the EU, for instance, nor are all countries using the euro. There remains substantial difference in culture, shopping behavior, and purchasing power. And importantly, there is not one marketplace that allows you to cover the whole of Europe. So for your consideration and planning for relating to your expansion, there's one question I would suggest you address early on, namely where to start, which countries and marketplaces to focus on. And that's what we will look at now to get some background and some guidance here. What you see here on this side, on the left-hand side, is Europe split up, the total of Europe split up in some blocks, in some groups. And those groups have been based on cultural differences, purchasing power, e-retail shopping patterns, etc. And it is made by the European e-commerce region report. That's where I've taken it from. So this is an educated guess as to how you can split up the different blocks in Europe. You will also see that UK is not part of that. Of course, it will be dark blue, but we have covered the UK separately, so I'm taking that out here. Okay, looking at the next part, look at the table here. And what I wanted to show you there is that if you look at the population in these blocks, and you can see the population, the blocks again listed here, the population Western Europe, the Germany, France, the Benelux, might just have 36, maybe 1/3 of the country's population of Europe within its border. However, if you then start looking at the e-sales, the same countries represent more than 50% of all sales, all e-sales in Europe. So that might help you to concentrate on these countries. Let's say you can identify, you can choose for the largest market, Germany, France, Italy, also Spain, Poland, and the Benelux. But the other way you can look at this, and it really depends on your product and your objective, is to look at climate. For instance, if you sell beachwear, you might go to the southern countries. If you sell products that are more relevant for urban environments, you might be more interested in Poland or Eastern Europe. So you need to really be careful of which product, which countries you're choosing. And in terms of marketplaces, as I mentioned before, the marketplace offer in Europe is very fragmented also. Let's have a look at that. First of all, the table. On the left-hand side, I'll show you the 10 largest marketplaces in Europe, ranging from Amazon all the way to FNAC. And it shows the monthly visits in millions per month. And what you can see here is that Amazon is really by far the largest. 50% of all monthly visits go to Amazon as far as marketplaces is concerned. What I show here on the right, in this column is what those marketplaces are selling. Most of them are general marketplaces where you can sell and also buy a whole range of products. Apart from two, there's one that is very much a large one, that is Zalando, sells fashion products across Europe, and you have Mano Mano that in selected countries is selling tools and homeware. On the right-hand side, you will see the countries that are most important for them. So for instance here, you will see that Amazon is not just leading in Europe, but they are leading in Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. The other point I would like to make here is that there are only two more marketplaces that really have a fairly widespread across Europe. One is, of course, eBay, that you know well, but the other one is Zalando, that sells fashion products. Finally, a point on the right bottom corner, cross-border sales are quite an important feature of e-commerce in Europe. So that means purchasing from English sites, even if you're in another country where English is not the native language. So the market is fragmented. The larger countries are also, the larger players clearly are also focusing on the larger countries, and there is a good reason for that, because that's where their investment can deliver most of their own returns. But where does that leave you? And what I want to do here is quickly help you with some more general statements that I can make. If you're looking to cover, if you want to sell your product on a more general marketplace, here are those that are most suitable. Amazon, we've covered those. Allegro is very big in Poland. Bol.com for the Benelux countries. EMAG for Romania and its neighbors, and Cedon for the Nordic countries. And here on the right-hand side, the specialist. And the symbols are here for fashion. So these are the fashion marketplaces, the largest fashion marketplaces, electronics, homeware, books, arts and crafts, and then music. Now, I do want to make a few very quick comments here. And that is that next to these, there are another 20 marketplaces, at least in Europe, that are worth considering. It is also important to know that although some of these marketplaces might be smaller, they might be leader in their segment. For instance, Mano Mano in France sells more in their do-it-yourself market and in homeware than Amazon does in France, for instance. And there are more examples of that. Zalando in Germany sells more fashion than Amazon does, for instance. Finally, size is not everything. A lot of these marketplaces have conditions that might suit you or might not suit you. Some of these marketplaces, you pay 50% commission, others you pay more or less. So it is not that marketplaces dictate that you go to marketplaces expansion in Europe, mean that you go Amazon or eBay. It really doesn't mean that there are a lot of other options available, and it's just a question of research and knowledge. I would have to put in a slide here about the developments on marketplaces in Europe. I'm going to skip that now. We can maybe come back to that later. I want to move over briefly to the seller's journey. And in the seller's journey, we have previously, in a previous webinar, identified the 6 questions. What are your objectives? What region? What marketplaces? We've covered that already. But the next one is quite critical, and we will cover off some of those today. Do you have the right capabilities? And the capabilities that we have identified, and as in we, that is Enterprise Ireland and us here, are those. Do you have the strategic capability? Do you have the understanding? Do you have the right information to plot your strategy? What about marketing? The marketing team, do they know what they need to do? What about customer service? But also logistics and the finance and legal area. And for Europe, the logistics and the finance, the VAT aspects are critically important. So we're going to move over to those now. This is a segue into Lisa, who is going to talk to us about supply chain and logistics consideration. Over to you, Lisa.
Thanks very much, Frank. Morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I said I'd talk about logistics in a different overview here. So when we think about logistics, we think about moving product from A to B. So bringing in, materials, raw product. We think about how quickly we need them. What we really want to talk about from e-commerce point of view is the customer aspect. What does the customer want at the end of the day? They want to order their product from a marketplace or from an e-commerce store and have it with them as quickly as possible. So we talk about partnering with a supply chain or a partner who understands what you're trying to do. When we talk about that, we look at the different options that are available to you as an Irish business. Are you going to self-fulfill? What does your warehousing look like? How are you going to record your products? And how are you going to integrate not only with the marketplace, but also with the logistics carrier? And how that looks from your point of view through maybe an API or bespoke integration. This will allow you to streamline your process from a logistics point of view, that your data comes from your marketplace into your warehouse system, that pulls into your logistics partners labeling system, creates any labeling, customs paperwork, and the shipment goes on the way. Or you're going to use what we call a 3PL. And a 3PL is a third-party logistics partner. So you would have your shipments dropped into them with your product. They will SKU it and they will have it up on the shelves for you, and you send them in the orders. They then pick and pack your orders for you and send them out. You would then receive reports from them saying what volume stock you have, what's in rotation, and what's out for delivery, and they will issue that to you. Or you're going to use the marketplace. So you would be responsible then for delivering your product into the marketplace, and they do very similar to 3PL. They will SKU, what we call SKU, which is source or store your product for you, and then they pick and pack it. So the options are there for you on what you want to do for your business. What we see is a lot of businesses, they do both. They'll do self-fulfillment and they'll use some marketplace, or they'll purely use a 3PL. So it's very flexible to every business needs and how you want to take that step. It is really important that you understand from the very get-go what your plan looks like. What is your strategy to grow? Where do you want to focus on? Okay, we are going to self-fulfill from our marketplace orders. We have told them we have a cut-off time of this point and they're going to dispatch. And what that looks like from your mindset or your whole plan of how your day is going to work from a logistical point of view. We've all seen that meme of somebody, ordering a shipment and you're looking out the window looking for the van. That's the expectation now. People want a really quick turnaround from their logistics. When you partner with someone who understands, customs, cut-off times, what the customer's expectation is, it'll alleviate that problem for you, allowing you to grow your business internationally and into other marketplaces and helping you grow. What we would say is don't leave this at the last minute. Reach out to an industry market leader, have a chat with someone, and you leverage their experience. So I myself have been in DHL for 18 years. So we love to sit with Irish business and talk you through, okay, what's your product? What does that look like? How you package it? And how we best get it to the client. Do you want to flick on there for me, Frank? I think you've got control. And this is what it comes down to. It's customer satisfaction. So in an ideal world, your box is picked up, delivered to your customer by a very neat, clean, tidy courier. It's signed for and they're out the door. It all leads back to your customer satisfaction rating through a marketplace, which is really important. And as we see here, 95% of people will abandon their sale if they don't see a delivery option. 36% of people have a subscription, be it a Amazon Prime, an ASOS. Everybody's using a free delivery option. It's seen as a really quick way. I've already paid for my delivery. It's going to be here, one swipe sale, and my product is on the way. It's about making it really, really easy for the consumer to get the product to them. And how you do that is really important. So as you see here, 60% of shopping's brought goods from a different country. That's going to open up so many different markets to Irish businesses, not just the Ireland or the UK, but into the whole of Europe. And within that, again, as Frank was saying, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Andorra, Norway, Gibraltar, they're European countries, but not in the EU. And what we see, Frank, if you want to flick on for me there, is customs is a big thing. And customs can hold you back, but we're going to talk about services that are available before we go into customs. So when we're talking about product delivery, we talk about three main aspects of delivery. So post, and within post, there's different options. So standard post, it's just put through your letterbox. Registered post, that's the courier scanning it delivered as he puts it through the letterbox. Or an actual signed for delivery, which is where you have to come down the stairs at 7 o'clock in the morning and sign for the postman. We've all been that person. Or by road. Road is a longer transit time because it goes by ferry and by truck. You're looking at approximately 2 to 6 days, depending on where it's going within Europe. It's door to door, fully trackable. That's the main industry standard of logistics for the road service. And by air, you're looking at overnight delivery, door to door. And this is really what we're seeing a lot of e-commerce and a lot of marketplaces leveraging. So when you have subscription service, they're bumping you up for your delivery option, and they're saying your next day delivery is free as part of your subscription, or you're being realistic and saying this is the transit time, this is what you're going to pay for your delivery charges built into the product. So it's all about getting there as you see fit. You will see on a lot of marketplaces or e-commerce websites that they're giving the customer the option, they're giving them the control. They're giving them the postal option, the road option, and the air option, and they're allowing the consumer to pick how they want to get their product. So if I'm going on holidays on Friday and I need a new swimsuit for my daughter, I'm going to pay for the next day delivery. I want to have it in my hands before I fly out on Friday. Or actually, it's a Christmas present. I have a little bit of time, but it's really important. I'm going to let it go by road. Or actually, it's okay by post. It'll get here when it gets here. But using a carrier or a warehousing function who will allow you to flexibly give all options to your customer is really important. And Frank, if you want to flick on there for me. So transport, it's not just getting it from A to B. We talked about cut-offs earlier. So what's your cut-off time for pick and pack? How quickly do you need, how much time is it going to take you or your logistics partner to get that shipment packed into a box, a customs label, or what we call a normal transit label onto that box and get it out for delivery? The customer will then want a shipping confirmation. You know, your shipment is on the way. Here's your tracking number. Giving them the control of delivery is really important. You know, deliver it to a neighbor, leaving it at the office for you to pick up the next time you're in there. It really helps your delivery experience. That then moves into your customer satisfaction rating on a marketplace, and that boosts you higher. So the more 5-star reviews you're getting, the higher ranking you're getting through a marketplace, which means more people see your product. People do look at the reviews, and they will look at, you know, if it's comment on transit, you know, got it, great, next day, will buy again, will purchase again from this marketplace in the seller, because they know the product is going to get to them as they see fit. Me there, Frank. Customs. This is the big thing that we feel holds Irish businesses back. When we talk about customs, it seemed to be a minefield, and we're going into a marketplace. It's, well, who does the paperwork? Who's going to fulfill this? Am I doing a 3PL? Do I need to understand, you know, every customs regulation? If, as we talked about, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Norway, the answer is no. If you partner with a company, they will help you with this. That's what our expertise is here for, is to give you the knowledge that you need. So we will talk about, you know, if you're selling, you need to use a commercial invoice. This can all be created online. What needs to be on your commercial invoice? And really it comes down to 6 key pieces of understanding. You know, the consignee, the consignor, what the product is, what the value is, where is it going, and a HS code. And I'm sure Alan might talk about HS codes and what that leads to VAT and duty very shortly. But this is the big thing that people fear. It's customs. And what if it's held in customs, and what's the paperwork? And it stops people selling online, or they'll stick purely to EU countries because it's safe, that they don't need to do that. What we're saying is the option is there. The world's your oyster. So don't let something like customs or a little bit of a knowledge gap hold you back. Marketplaces are there to streamline deliveries. Carriers are there to get it to your customers quickly and as easy as possible for you. So do leverage the experience that's out there in the marketplace to help you guys grow. I think that's me, Frank. And sustainability, there's lots of changes coming into play. Logistics is ever changing, and sustainability is a big, big thing. What we're seeing is a lot of companies are going for accreditation in terms of sustainability. A lot of carriers are actually coming into play and saying, well, you can actually only deliver if you're using a sustainable delivery option. The main players in the field will be able to support you with this and offer you either an offsetting or an insetting option to your sustainability approach. That would allow you to tell your consumer, actually, you're shipping carbon neutral. So you're not creating any carbon, or you're offsetting any carbon on your delivery. And it really is the next step where we're seeing it from an e-commerce point of view. More people are looking for a sustainable delivery option, from getting it either into the marketplace for accepting in delivery products that are only on a sustainable delivery option, or getting to the time where it's carbon neutral, carbon efficient.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. As a next part in the review of capabilities, things we need to know, we have Rhode here, and he's going to talk about VAT and taxes. Alan, over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm Alan, and I'm the co-founder at Taxmen. We have been managing VAT and customs compliance on behalf of European merchants for over a decade. So I think I'm the right person to help you understand a bit better about the VAT dynamics if you are trying to ship within the EU with a marketplace, or even without a marketplace. I think we can separate consumer distance sales from Ireland to another European country from, as a case one, from the case where you use a warehouse in another EU country, the latter case being with Amazon FBA or with Zalando. So Frank, let's start with the next slide, which is the case, as I said before, of shipping consumer parcels from the Republic of Ireland towards another European country. There is a simplification from July 2021 in place. If you make more than 10,000 euros worth of sales around Europe, which is a relatively low threshold, we're talking about B2C sales from Ireland to all the other European countries. So we are hoping you can meet this threshold quite easily. VAT applies in the country of destination. So if you're shipping from Ireland to France and you have made more than 10,000 euros per year of pan-European sales, VAT will apply in France at the local rate. The standard one is 20%. If you're shipping from Ireland to German consumers, the German rate of 19% will apply. The good news is that you don't need to register for VAT outside of Ireland. If you're making consumer distance sales from Ireland, you can enjoy the one-stop shop, which is a new system in place for distance sales of goods since 2021, that allows you to report everything from Ireland through revenue. So basically, every quarter, you will file a return in Ireland with all your cross-border consumer sales in Europe. You will state how many sales you have done in France, Estonia, Germany, with shipment from Ireland, so cross-border consumer sales. And then you will make only, thank you, Frank, only one payment to revenue, and revenue will distribute the revenues to all the other European countries. Please keep in mind, you will have to apply the local VAT rate of the country of destination. There are databases available, and regarding the VAT rates applying in Europe, you need to understand first if your product is subject to the standard VAT rate or the reduced VAT rate in the country of destination. Usually, products like furniture or apparel, they are standard rated. The filings are quarterly, so four filings per calendar year. And as I said before, the nice thing, you just pay revenue, the Irish Revenue Agency, and they will distribute all the revenues. If we can move to the next, is a different case, the case where you decide to move some stock to a warehouse outside Ireland. It can be the case of Amazon FBA, it can be a case of 3PL, not necessarily linked to a marketplace. Please always remember, you always need a VAT number in those countries in Europe where you hold stock, regardless of the revenues that you generate in that country. So, and it can be a bit misleading that most European countries, they have a minimum threshold for registration, but this threshold doesn't apply to foreign businesses, to businesses established in another country. So an Irish business holding stock in France, Germany, Italy, Poland, they always need to be registered for VAT immediately before shipping the goods in bulk from Ireland or wherever to the country where the stock is held. A good thing, fiscal representation is no longer needed. Because Ireland is within the EU, you can apply for a direct identification for a VAT number in another European country without the need of fiscal representation. Fiscal representation is a bit of a nuisance because the local agent, is potentially liable with you for any unpaid VAT. So you can imagine it's more expensive. While a direct identification, you are basically treated as a local business, and it's less expensive. Once you have applied for a local VAT number, let's say in Germany, and you're shipping the goods there, you will have to report an intra-EU sale from Ireland to Germany and to your own VAT number in Germany. And then in Germany, your agent will have to report an intra-EU purchase. So you have to report, even if it's not a real sale, but you have to report the transfer of your own goods. And if you reach specific thresholds, which are quite high, you may be called to report these transfers with intrastate returns. So if you are transferring more than 800,000 euros per year worth of goods to Germany, Germany will require you to file the intrastate arrivals in Germany. But it's a happy problem, because if you are transferring 800,000 euros per year worth of goods to Germany, it means you have some movement going on. It's a so-called happy problem. The next slide, please. Of course, if you have goods in Germany and you make domestic sales in Germany, you will use the German VAT number to report the local sales. Some countries have peculiar rules concerning B2B transactions. It's not the case of Germany, but for instance, France, if you are selling goods B2B in France to a French business, you must apply reverse charge. So your VAT, your invoice will not bear any VAT. The French business will apply reverse charge. That's a technicality. I'm not dwelling so much on it. And another important thing to know, if you have registered for the OSS for your own sales from Ireland to, let's say, Germany, France, and then you are making cross-border sales from the warehouses, let's say in Germany, France, remember, cross-border sales, they will be reported under the OSS. It may sound a bit strange. You're having goods in Germany and shipping these goods to a French consumer. You will report these sales from Ireland under the OSS, but you will have to specify that you use a German facility. For non-European businesses, which is not the case, of course, of Ireland, but if you're using a UK entity, for instance, Amazon will collect, report, and pay VAT on behalf of non-EU merchants, Amazon or any other marketplace in Europe. But this is not the case of Ireland, that belongs to the EU. It's the case of when you are using an entity established outside of the EU. So you see, the rules are quite articulate, but there were huge simplifications since 2021. It's rules you can cope with, definitely, if you want to start exporting goods from Ireland to Europe. And I'm, of course, happy to answer any question. It's a learning curve, not an easy learning curve for whoever doesn't have any previous knowledge about how VAT works on e-commerce sales in Europe. But it's manageable. It's a learning curve that can be dealt with.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Alan. I'm sure there might be some questions later, but Evan, I'm going to hand it over to you now for the panel discussion. I think you have some questions that you want to start discussing, right? And then afterwards we have the questions for the individual presenters from the individual listeners, so to speak.
Yep. And I'll encourage whoever's on the webinar now, if you have questions, to populate the Q&A box and we can get to it after the panel discussion. So the first question that I'm going to pose to the panel, and I will be asking Lisa first, just so you can prepare yourself, because we did discuss this before the webinar had started, and it was a very good question. And I want to get the opinion of the three experts we have here. That why do you believe, or in your opinion, what holds back an Irish company, or for the case of Alan, who may be dealing with UK companies more, what holds a company back from exporting internationally, and especially through marketplaces?
For me, it's the fear. It's the fear of the unknown. It seems like a mountain of a challenge when you first look at it. A marketplace, customs, deliveries, ranking. It seems like a huge knowledge base that you need to learn. And it's fear that holds them back. And the risk of what's going to happen. Will there be a return? What's the cost to meet this? So when we break it down and we say from a logistical point of view, There's no risk. Now, you already have your product. You just need to get them to the customer. And using a marketplace helps you do that. A carrier won't charge you for anything that you don't ship. So it's about really partnering with somebody who'll hold your hand through that aspect and give you the knowledge maybe that you're missing. But for me, that's the biggest thing that we always ask is why? Why are you holding back? Why are you just doing Europe or the UK? Or why not go global? Where can we help you grow is the big question we always ask. But that would be for me. And what would you guys think?
Frank, maybe we can pass the microphone on to you in terms of why do
No,
you
I totally agree with Lisa. And but I think the follow-up question then is, okay, how do you work with, what partners do you need? How do you work with these partners effectively? And you can decide to keep everything in-house, or you can really outsource some of the things that you're less comfortable with, or at least partly. So you can speak to DHL and ask them about the logistics consideration, or you can speak with Ellen maybe just to get some advice, or work with us on an ongoing basis. We can help with the identification of the best marketplaces. We can help with the setup. We can help with sales improvement on the different marketplaces. So there are a lot of people out there that can help and that are willing to help. And what Enterprise Island is doing, I think it's great, is getting the people on the call today to show people, hey, there are people out there that can help. And one more thing there is, and I'm handing over to Ellen, but it is not just working with individually. I think it is important because so many of these things are related. I think it is important that you speak to everybody, to all of the input that you need, and then make a plan almost, and then maybe discuss it one more time to make sure that you know how all the dots are connected and that one decision you make somewhere is not impacting on something else somewhere else.
And Alan, would you have any comments in terms of what holds companies back from exporting through marketplaces in your experience?
I think the costs of having inventory in other countries maybe, or the fact of having to invest in marketing on multiple jurisdictions. But I don't, fiscally speaking, tax-wise, I don't see any obstacles really. I mean, compared to how difficult it has become to ship to the UK, for instance. So I would say that tax-wise, the EU is a single market. So I don't see really huge obstacles.
That's good to know. Frank, do you have a comment to make?
Yeah, just to take a slightly different, show a slightly different perspective on this. Often when I speak to companies about marketplaces, they say, well, it feels like that's dumping down my brand a little bit. So they think maybe I go for websites or I do Facebook adverts or whatever. And one of the slides I showed was about the customer experience on marketplaces. And this year, there has really been a tipping point where customers actually realize that what marketplaces are offering is really kind of a benchmark that a lot of other e-commerce companies are now aspiring to. They're setting a benchmark, next day delivery, the reviews that people are looking for, the information that is provided, etc. And if that is still not sufficient to get over the fear of dumping down the brand, there are marketplaces out there that are very different to Amazon or eBay that allow you to advertise your brand, and it almost becomes a hybrid brand side marketplace experience. I wanted to add that because you were specifically asking also about exporting through marketplaces.
Nice. And then the second question that I have for the panel. Now, a number of the panel have discussed developments, and they've used the word developments. And I'd like to ask each speaker, and I think I'll start with Frank this time. What are the key developments that you're seeing in the marketplace landscape as a marketplace specialist?
Maybe I can just briefly mention two, and I can refer to the slides that are being sent out anyway. But you see more and more niche marketplaces coming up. Marketplaces that have a lot of social media in there, marketplaces that are only accessible for companies that have a little bricks shop somewhere. There's so many things popping up now that I think that is very, very encouraging, because that gives opportunity for everybody to consider this. You don't always have to go to Amazon either. And then the second thing is, we see more and more that putting a product on Amazon or marketplaces and do a little bit of advertising on marketplace that Lisa was also referring to helps. But more and more we see also that advertising and marketing activities next to marketplace platforms becomes important. So helping to build your brand on social media, for instance, or having a website, a web shop, or a brand site next to your other sales channels like marketplaces. So I wanted to mention those two. Thank you.
And now we can pass over to Lisa. Lisa, I'm not quite sure if you have another development in mind, but when you mentioned sustainability, I guess, like, if you want to go further in depth into that and how important that is for the overall kind of development of e-commerce and marketplaces.
Absolutely. So if we look at how e-commerce has changed over the past 3 years with COVID and Brexit and everything's been massive changes, and it's kind of bedded down this year. And what we're really seeing the tide turning is from sustainability. Packaging being the big thing, you know, packaging your shipment in and Amazon, I'm going to use, they've just changed their packaging. As you've seen, everybody's gotten the little paper bags coming in with their Amazon deliveries now. And they made that change at the start of the year. That's the expectation out in the marketplace, that people are going to use responsible packaging. They're not going to put a pen into a big box to make it look really fancy. They can be really nicely packaged, but in a sustainable point of view. But then also, if you're shipping from Ireland to France, people are worried about how much CO2 is being created from that delivery. Where's that carbon going? And, you know, am I damaging the planet by using, you know, a marketplace or a logistics carrier instead of buying local? So that's what we're having our Go Green Plus option to say, you can still buy internationally, but offsetting your carbon, so still being really responsible to the planet. And a big thing that Frank spoke about there's a lot of things going on about customer experience and customer journey. That's paramount in all of this. So whether you're rating, you know, on your Amazon or your marketplace and putting that back to your own web store, they go hand in hand. The amount of data available to a buyer now is huge, and you need to leverage that. If you've got really good ratings on your Amazon or on your own website, have them there. Use that to really leverage your business. Because customers, we all scroll down and look at the reviews, look at the pictures of the products. It's part of the experience now, where before we just would have ordered and it would have got here. People have so much knowledge out there and so much information at their fingertips. You need to be smart about what you use to help your business grow.
Perfect, thanks. Thanks for that insight. And Alan, maybe if you'd like to mention in terms of developments, are we expecting any new regulatory changes in terms of European Union VAT wise? Are we going to be seeing any changes there?
Yes, it's not official, but there is a new reform that should be approved by the end of the year and will become effective in another couple of years, whereby even those businesses holding stock in another European countries will be allowed to use the OSS to report sales of stock held in other countries. So basically, if this reform sees the light, you will just need one European VAT number, the Irish VAT number, to report sales, even if you hold stock overseas in Europe. So it's a further simplification. But we shall see whether it has been approved informally by the European countries, the 27 European countries. It's not law yet.
So we'll keep
become a directive and then transposed by all the European countries. So it will take some time, but it seems that the European countries have reached an agreement about extending the OSS to local sales too.
That make it sound as if taxes will be easy going forward.
Yes, I'm the only one worse off because our business.
And then I think we'll ask one final question for the panel, and then we'll go into our Q&A session. And it's very open-ended, could be very controversial. And Frank, will start off with you. We're doing 3 webinars which highlight 3 different regions: the UK, Europe, and the US. And each of these regions have their own pluses, their own negatives, essentially, and they have their own caveats. So, because today's session is focusing on Europe, why should an Irish company pick or choose exporting through marketplaces to Europe over the UK or the US?
Okay.
Nice easy
It's a tough
question
one.
for
It is a
Monday
tough
morning.
one.
Nice easy question for a Monday morning.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the great advantage of Europe is that you can actually pick 2 or 3 countries that are in Europe that you can supply from 1 or 2 warehouses, that you can effectively sell to through 1 or 2, maybe even 1 marketplace. So you can cover off part of Europe effectively to a larger size than you can actually do the UK. I wouldn't say that Europe will be easier than the UK, but there are definitely different challenges there. The United States is a lot further away, a lot more complex issue there. I know Lisa will be thinking and saying, well, we can get it there just as easily as possible. But the question is really, what is your time frame? What is your timing? What's your sequencing? And Europe is probably, at least parts of Europe, are probably easier than the United States if you start. From my experience, if I look at it from setting up and managing the sales.
Nice. And Lisa, do you have any further comments to add to this?
Yeah, I agree with Frank there. You know, when we talk about the EU from a logistics point of view, you've no customs paperwork. It's really straightforward. You know, if you're using, as we talked about, air logistics, it's pick up today, delivery tomorrow, or dispatch from your marketplace. You know, they'll dispatch it to get it there tomorrow if it's next day delivery. For me, it's that sense of there's actually no risk value to the business. There's no fear of being held in customs or having to understand customs regulations. I'm kind of contradicting myself a little because you've asked me to go pro EU for a little while. But for me, it's if I was an Irish business, what we talk about from a DHL point of view is go global. There's apps. If you understand what you need to do, it's fine. But I get the safety of the EU and the safety of, you know, I can move my shipment very easily to an EU country. From a customer point of view and a satisfactory point of view, it's simple. So I kind of think that for me would be the EU. It's easier to do than any of the other countries.
And Alan, would you be of the same opinion that it is easier tax-wise to export via marketplaces to Europe than the UK and the US?
Yeah, no, remember, there is one good thing about the US. There is a $800 threshold if you're selling from your own website to the US, which makes most sales to the US market tax-free. So, yes, with marketplace it's probably easier in Europe, but if you're selling from your own website, the US market is pretty open because up to $800, which is probably, I don't know, in euros, but it's a very generous low value relief. So you don't pay taxes in the US or customs duties or sales taxes within this threshold. So it's not many are aware about it, but it's quite an opportunity.
Couldn't agree with you more. And we actually discussed the States as a prime market for Irish businesses because of that. If your product's less than $800, it's picked up in Ireland, delivered in the States in 2 days, door to door. It's so easy for an Irish business to do, and you really have to leverage that $800 mark. I do have a slide, I'll send it on to Evan afterward to share with the team, which is de minimis values for other countries. That shows that there's other countries who have high levels of a de minimis value that are also easy for Irish businesses to ship into because it's a high level. I think Australia is $1,000 from memory. So it's another high one to really leverage from an Irish business point of view.
Frank,
New Zealand, Singapore, yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, I just want to maybe if I can come in there, because we have a lot of clients sell in the United Kingdom, in Europe, and in the United States also. And I think maybe this is what my thinking about this has always been, is that you look at it from a tax perspective, from a sales perspective, from a product approval, from a logistics perspective. You will get different perspectives, and that's what you need from the experts. And what is then required is to sit down with each of them, or maybe even with some of them together, and say, okay, if I do this, what about that? So that you can, because there are clearly things that are related. You make a decision here that has an impact on some of the other things. And then the other thing you want to do is to come to a kind of an indication of a business case. So what I'm really pleading for here is that talk to each of the experts, but then make a business plan, discuss that with some of the same experts again, so that you get a cross-fertilization and try to come to a business case that looks at the volume forecast, the cost forecast, etc. And that is definitely possible for anybody listening to this and say, actually, that sounds interesting. Evan is the person to go to. He can pull these things together, and he can get you to speak to Lisa, to Ellen, to me, maybe to others also, and get an approach going, which is more a strategic approach based on research, on insights. And that will then also include, what is the best sequencing? Is it the United States? Is it maybe China? Or is it the UK and Europe? Why and how can you sequence them? Evan, that's I really wanted to get that in, because I think it is so crucially important.
Okay, thanks for your insight, and we'll move on now to the Q&A. Frank, if you just want to, I think, go through and then next slide, because we'll have everyone's emails up while the Q&A is going on, so people can take note of the contact details and send us emails if needed. But Frank, there's a question here for you. And the question is, what marketplace would you suggest using as a testing ground for a retail business selling into the EU?
Does it have any information about what they're selling?
No, it's just a generic question. They
well,
haven't mentioned what they're
it's
selling.
a bit hard to answer that with one marketplace, but the way I would approach that is to see, just go on Google and say, I want to sell this marketplace for this in Europe, etc. That's where I would start. I would start looking at, of course, you have to have a good look at Amazon and some of the other obvious points, maybe Zalando if it is for fashion. See what's being sold there already. And if you say, actually, there are companies out there that sell similar to my products, then you can try them. The other thing, of course, and that's, some competitor information is sometimes useful. Type in the name of or a product name of one of your competitors and see where they are offering it. So that can also lead you to some of the marketplaces worth considering. And then some of the marketplaces will provide additional information about sales. And if you can't get it, we can get it for you. And you can identify how much is the competitor selling, what price, all the time, etc. And then you can dive even further and make a decision. I hope that answers that question of that person.
I hope so too. And then there's another question, and I believe Frank is also the best person placed to answer this. It's how big of an inventory does a company need to start trading on international marketplaces? Now, there's no mention of the sector that they're in, so it's a very open-ended question.
Well, it's interesting to see what Lisa maybe has to say on this also, but I would say from a sales and marketing perspective, you don't want to run out of stock. So you need to make a forecast of how much you're going to sell, and then have, let's say, 3 months of stock in there. And it can maybe be 2 months if you can replenish quickly. But it can never be less than a month of stock, because sometimes, replenishing, getting it out there, getting it accepted, getting it listed takes at least 4 weeks. So it depends on your forecast and where you're selling it.
Okay, perfect. And then a question to the panel, but I guess it's more towards Lisa. It's RE Logistics. For bulky palletized goods, are there distribution centers that Irish companies can use to house such stock? Any advice from the panel as how to identify such stock holding hubs?
Yeah, there's definitely a number within Ireland that can be availed of. And what they would do is they'll come out and look at your products, look at how many products you have that need to be skewed, which is stored, and what the lifeline is, how long they need to store them for. Is there temperature storage, what the product is, how often do they need to be rotated? And they'll work with you to see, how best they can fit your needs. And there's a number of them out there in the marketplace. And if you want to reach out afterwards, there's definitely a few I could recommend that we have worked with in the past. But there's definitely a lot there that can be leveraged. But again, it's what suits your needs and your product and your rotation. Is it pharma? Is it e-commerce? Is it clothing? Is it cosmetics? Different 3PLs and different providers will have strengths in different things. But there's definitely people who can help you out in the marketplace.
Perfect. Frank, we have one more question. Now, I'm not sure, maybe you may want to follow up with it because it is very specific. Are there EU marketplaces dedicated to pet products? As they're researching the benefit of wholesale to major online pet retailers versus using marketplaces. So if any come to mind right now you want to highlight, or maybe you want to follow up with this person.
I will follow up with the person directly, if I may, because we did some work on that market a year and a half ago. So I just quickly want to update my understanding,
Okay.
and then we can have a discussion.
And then there was just one question that was answered by Alan through the chat box. It's how does Amazon deal with VAT for EU businesses selling within the EU? I just want to highlight this for the webinar, for the recording. So Alan replied, maybe Alan wants to discuss it very quickly again, but he did reply that Amazon's not involved.
Yeah,
if it's
EU
US,
Amazon is not involved. Just if a seller is established outside of the EU, Amazon will collect, report, and pay VAT.
Perfect. Thank you.
European business is irrelevant.
So the emails of the panel members are here. If you have any further follow-up questions, or you want to follow up with a question that you've asked, feel free to email the people here. And then Frank, if you want to go on to the last slide before we finish the webinar. So today, as with all the other webinars, we've provided you with the basic information. We're bringing in these 4 topics: the opportunity of marketplaces, the marketplaces themselves, the logistics and taxes. And what we're trying to do is show how these topics are related to each other. And what we're trying to do is start to connect the dots. The purpose of these webinars and the US one planned for November are to be used as a general introduction to marketplaces and an introduction to the regions. We understand that each brand, each client are looking at different regions, whether it's the UK, Europe, the US. So we want to introduce you to these regions. We want to build an appetite. So how are we going to take our support further? So we see the need to evolve, our Enterprise Ireland see the need to evolve our offering from this generic information webinar sessions to specific targeted information. So therefore, Frank and I will be facilitating, or Frank will be facilitating, these free one-to-one consultations to help you overcome your marketplace issues, whether it's you're unsure whether your strategy is correct, or it's working for you, or it's whether you want to put together a watertight business plan, or it could be to address a very specific problem in terms of you're not winning the buy box, or your listings aren't strong enough. That will be, if you get in contact with myself, I'll be able to facilitate these consultations with Frank. The places for the consultations are limited, so it is a first come, first served basis. So if you have pressing issues, please don't hold back on getting in touch with us. And with that final note, we will end today's webinar. It was an absolute pleasure to have Frank, Lisa, and Alan join us. It was very interesting to hear from their insights, and I am very grateful that you could join us on this session. So goodbye to everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having us.